Hello guys and welcome back. This is Nick speaking, and today I got something a little bit special and different for you. I was invited on to do the TPG True PC Gaming podcast with the awesome guys from the site. And I don't know if you remember, but back in the day they were the first, at least as far as I know, the first people to mention indie impressions anywhere in the media. So of course I was happy to join them, and we had a really great discussion about indie games and the channel and just the general sense of what's going on in the industry. So I thought it'd be very cool to bring that and share it with you guys and upload it to my channel. Of course, I urge you to go over to their website, which is featured down at the bottom of the image, and check them out as well. So without further delay, here we go, and thank you very much for joining us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the True PC Gaming Podcast. This time we're joined by another special guest, Nick Reinecke, also known as RockLeeSmile, who you may know from his Indie Impressions series on YouTube. What's up, Nick?
Hey, thanks for having me very much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I was just checking out your stuff. I mentioned you before the show. I watched a nice string of your videos, and for people that haven't heard of you, it's really fascinating stuff. You do these long, kind of like Let's Play videos, but not as annoying as Let's Play videos, because I tend to not like those. Giving kind of your impressions, hence the title Indie Impressions, on all of these games you otherwise wouldn't really know. I mean, I was surprised by how much stuff even I hadn't heard of. So, I mean, why don't you kind of start by introducing your channel and what it's all about and what you're kind of trying to do with it?
Sure. Well, it started quite a while back, and I'm not going to get into that just yet, but the main topic and focus of it is the Indie Impressions, which what it really comes down to is me sort of blindly looking at an indie game that, at least for the most part, I hope most of the people that are watching haven't seen, and just sort of giving it a quick run through. I mean, not all of them are blind. I do some of them that way, some not, depending on the nature of the game. But the idea is just to sort of see what it's about, give a view of it, and do a little sort of a nice, not too deep but not too heavy critique of what is going on in it. And the idea is really just to promote discussion, to get people into indie games that maybe they didn't know a great game is out there, but because they like this other one that they saw on my channel, maybe they'll watch that one, and just to get really people talking about stuff.
And by the way, I'm here, Adam.
Dude, I was just going to say, by the way, Adam's here too.
3. So is this going to be a gimmick now? Are you going to do this to me every day?
It's already a gimmick.
Okay. Well, Nick, I had a... Are you only looking for the more obscure indie games to give them to give them the spotlight, to give them the stage, as it were, or does it really matter in terms of the popularity of the indie game you want to do?
It's a good question, actually, because I've actually been vacillating a lot on that one. At times, I find that it's really a good idea to really talk about something that I think is not being adequately represented in the general indie scene. Other times, though, I just feel like playing a reasonably popular Steam game like Torchlight. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just what I feel like doing at the time. Other times it's because I have a reason. Maybe I want to get a certain one up a little bit. So it goes back and forth.
What is your process? What do you? So you get up in the morning, you think, I've got to do an Indie Impressions video today. Walk us through your research and how you come about finding these particular games.
Oh, well, there's a bunch of things. I look all over the internet, of course. I've had a number of threads on Reddit asking people, like, what are some games you would suggest that I try? I have a Facebook page, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about, at least mention later. I've also had people suggesting games on there. Same goes for Twitter, and then I always look through all the different websites that mention all the different indie games, and, of course, bundles, Steam. There's like a million different ways that I can come across these things. It's just about when I get to which one.
I have to interrupt everything right now, because I was just going through your YouTube channel, and I see you have a full playthrough of the perennial classic Kiss Psycho Circus.
Yes.
That I just want to let you know that is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a big deal. That was one of my first Let's Plays that had actually gotten much of any attention, and it was a great time. I had a really fun time playing that with my YouTube partner, Anza, who I'm sure we'll also probably mention later, too.
I need to watch through that whole thing. But actually, piggybacking onto Adam's question before I completely turn the page with that, highly recommend. I haven't watched it yet, but highly recommended Kiss Psycho Circus Let's Play.
Surprisingly fun game, actually. I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it is.
Yeah, I thought it was. I mean, I had that game for Dreamcast because I didn't really have a gaming PC at the time. And despite it getting really dismal reviews, I found myself really enjoying it a lot. And particularly the whole stupid gimmick of, because you weren't playing as Kiss, you were playing as this other band who would find like this gear from these legendary warriors that would gradually transform you into Kiss. But you were.
Sorry, I came to find out that it was apparently a reference to a graphic novel that had made up this alternate universe of Kiss Band. So I guess that's where that mythos came from. But I didn't know that going into it. I thought it was exactly what you were saying, just a bunch of random like Kiss like third-party knockoff versions of them.
Yeah, it was super weird. But what I was going to say about your selection, I did notice there was a lot of stuff in there that I hadn't really seen before I saw it on your list. So when you're talking about these more obscure games or these harder to catch games, how do you find those? I mean, are you just really into the scene and you just get on a lot of boards for indie games and check everything out and then draw attention to certain ones that strike your fancy, or are you kind of actively seeking out deliberately obscure things? Or I mean, how do you find a lot of these, I guess, is my question.
A little bit of everything. I mean, I do some searching on board. Like I said before, Reddit's been really helpful. A lot of people give me suggestions, and sometimes I end up landing on a website of a developer who might have 5 other games that they've never really publicized, and then, that sort of comes to the forefront. There's also this really great application called Tiggit, Tiggit, that everyone needs to check out, and it's a pretty small project. I'm not sure a lot of people know about it yet, but it's basically like a free-form distribution platform for little-known indie games. And you can go on there. It's completely free, and there's just a massive list of about 300 games so far that's being added to every month or so of new stuff that this person aggregates onto Tiggit. So it's like Steam for free indie games.
How has the developer reception been to you when you go to contact them in terms of maybe some of the bigger indie developers you go after or the smaller ones? Is there a difference in the reception that you get from a big or a little guy?
So far, it's been 100% positive. I've never had a negative interaction with any developers over this, which is just absolutely amazing to me. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so energized to keep doing this, because everybody I meet is awesome.
Yeah, I find that a lot of those smaller, in my limited experience dealing with indie developers, they really seem to just be super cool and super stoked that anybody's bringing attention to their game. If only the big publishers kept those attitudes. But
exactly.
at some point down the line, it goes from, oh, I'm super stoked people are playing my game, to all these entitled gamers won't stop complaining about our DLC or whatever, so screw that.
Suck more money out of them.
Yeah. I see you have about 100 indie or 99. You're about to release your 100th indie impression.
It's quite an amazing coincidence. Today is actually the day that I'll be putting up the 100th Indie Impressions episode, and I'm quite happy to be able to do that. And we're doing a giveaway and everything. I'm sure it'll be a few days between when we record this and when it's posted, so by then it'll probably be 102 or 3.
And is 100 anything particularly special?
Yeah, we're doing Dust Force today.
Nice.
The guys over at Hitbox Team were amazingly generous and actually gave me out a few codes to give away too, so we're going to be doing a nice giveaway as part of that.
We can have a True PC Gaming connection there. You can say, as seen on True PC Gaming, along with myself, it's Dust Force. But I was going to say, okay, so you got about 100 of these games that you've looked at, well, counting Dust Force. I'm not sure if this is something you want to get into, but do you maybe want to briefly discuss any that are particularly notable for you, like some of these games that you either really enjoyed or they were just really obscure going in and you discovered them through seeking them out for this channel and really fell in love with them?
One in particular was Alex Adventure. I think that was like my 3rd or 4th one that I posted.
Yeah, number 3. I'm looking at it right now.
That one really actually sort of sent me off in this direction in the first place. I even think I said it at the beginning of the episode. I'm like, I think this is what I want to do with my channel now. I want to look at really obscure and awesome games because that game was just so weird that it sort of like tweaked my brain a little bit. I haven't really seen much else that's to that level of weirdness that is still completely playable, and the developer seems like they're 100% in on the joke. It
I
was,
mean, what's can you describe the game briefly?
yeah, I mean, it's a platformer. It kind of feels like the whole thing is just like on LSD. it, there's something about the way the music is approached, the way that the art is approached, the sort of very minimalistic way that everything's sort of put together, and then I don't know, it's not the parts, but it's the sum of the parts that comes together to really give you this bizarre sense
Right.
that
So it's hard to really give it
yeah,
the proper credit, right?
you just sort of have to play it, I think.
Did you, when you first had the idea to, I guess the first question would be, what made you want to do a YouTube channel to begin with?
Well, it sort of evolved from me just making lots and lots of Super Meat Boy levels, and at first I had very little interest in YouTube, actually. It wasn't really a thing that I felt like I would have anything to do with, and I hardly watched videos on it either. But I got really involved in doing levels the very beginning of when Super Meat Boy came out. Before the actual level editor and level hub were released, there was this thing called dev mode that people could get into, and it was basically like a command line operation that let you get into how Ed and Tommy made the levels. So, that got out, and then a few of us started doing that. So that was a big thing for me, and I spent a lot of hours working on levels. So I made this one that was a really big deal, at least for me. It was like the most just crazy, off-the-wall, gigantic mess of spikes and saws that I could come up with. And that level is called Let It Rain. And I needed some sort of way to let people know that there was this crazy level out that they could play if they wanted to go find it. And YouTube was obviously the way to do that. And I had this friend Max, well, I still have this friend named Max, and he was the one that got me turned on to how I exactly do this recording stuff, because that was all new to me too. So this is only back in 2010 that I even figured this stuff out. Yeah.
Have you found? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it.
Oh, I was just gonna say, have you found the reception to be cool on YouTube? Because it's something we joke around a lot about here, that YouTube is really this hellhole, and the comments are really horrible. And there exists add-ons just for the sake of making the comments say herp derp derp because they're that bad. Have you found the audience to be kind of receptive and cool, or do they just troll you relentlessly with really dumb stuff?
On my channel, I'm really fortunate to say that I've had an amazing experience, but in general, I would put YouTube right up there with GameFAQs as about one of the worst places I've experienced for comments.
Exactly right. Adam, back me up on this. We brought up the same example when we discussed this before, so I'm so glad that the rest of the internet, I'm going to take you as a proxy for the rest of the internet, agrees with us on that.
Yeah, the forums, the internet in general has such a bad they lead such a bad example of, you go to get support from somewhere, and you're ridiculed. You try to add to a conversation, you get ridiculed. You're not popular unless you make some kind of a joke about a penis, or about something very,
or some super snarky crap,
and when we decided that we were going to do this, I was very tempted to turn the comments off. Just to not even have to deal with that aspect of it.
Well, that's what we did on CurrentGen.com, my other podcast that you may be interested in listening to, folks, even though we haven't done one in ages. I find that, our group is super cool. Maybe it just comes with the territory to a certain extent, because everybody we've had on that's had some kind of community interaction always says, oh, things have been great with the community for me. So maybe it's just, I don't know, the really popular stuff is where all the idiots come out of the woodwork or something.
Well, I kind of think of, if the presentation of indie impressions and your style of doing these particular videos. I think that kind of resonates towards the people who are going to comment.
Right.
Because if you were some, bro gamer and you said, you were
like, ugh, this game's gay.
Yeah, if you were cussing every third word or whatever, then, you would get those types of people. But if you set expectations to where this is how I'm going to run my channel, this is how I'm going to run my games, this is how I'm going to run my videos, usually, with the exception of a few people, you're going to have intelligent discussion as opposed to nonsense.
And that's exactly what I really hoped to have happen, and that's a lot of the reason that also kept me doing this, was because I felt like I had a significant tone, like some sort of a different angle on it than I've seen with hardly too many other YouTube channels, and there's a few that are out there, but I don't tend to go too far into that realm, and of course I do it a little bit. Every now and then I let a swear out or two, because nobody's just black or white like that, but yeah, I really did want to try and foster the right kind of community that appreciates what these games are about and doesn't just, casually just dismiss crap. That's not what I'm about anyway.
Well, I'm all about casually dismissing indie games personally, but speaking of which, it's something we alluded to before we started recording. It's something that Adam and I spoke about with Arman Khan, one of the other writers for the site. Maybe this is too meta a question, but how do you feel about kind of the current climate of indie gaming and what people perceive to be indie gaming and the kind of efforts to get this stuff out there in general? Indie gaming is obviously starting to become much bigger on popular digital download platforms like Steam, and at the same time you have developers like, Double Fine with Psychonauts rather infamously suddenly piggybacking onto the idea of being indie. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that whole thing?
I think it's kind of amazing, actually, what's happening. We haven't ever had this experience before because the internet has never been this integral to our lives, so there's never been a way for this movement to really gain traction. And now that we are in the position we are, and there's so many big-name indie developers, and I'm not saying it like there's dozens, but there's at least a pretty decent handful of them, I think that it's really given a lot of credibility to this, new subsection of the industry, and I think it's only getting bigger, by the day even.
Do you think indie as a kind of a blanket statement, do you look at that as more as a marketing term and a buzzword now?
I try not to. I understand that a lot of people could see it that way, but as far as I see it, it's really just a term that gets applied to people who don't have the money to buy, publishing rights. That's kind of the way I see it, and I know there's a lot of different angles you can come at it from, but indie is anybody that has a vision that doesn't have a way to monetarily reach millions of people.
Yeah, I see that. I see how it can be fuzzy because you do have sort of medium-sized developers that will self-publish their own stuff, and you don't know whether to include them as indie or to include them as just smaller publishers. Maybe it's if they publish their own stuff but no one else's, they're indie. I mean, I don't know. It's a very fuzzy term in general, and I do feel that at least some people out there are unfortunately using it as something of a marketing buzzword, which I think kind of takes away from, what it should mean, I suppose.
I guess that would make them like post-indie or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it because I don't even know what counts anymore. I remember when Serious Sam 3 came out, they said on Steam, like, the return of the original indie game. And I'm like, I guess it's indie. But, yeah,
does example,
Crow Team...
Actually. Yeah, because
I suppose...
There's like a gray area, like a fine line between when every indie developer becomes non-indie at some point.
Right, yeah, like at what point does Crow Team become big enough that they're no longer considered indie? Is it when all of a sudden they're big enough to be publishing stuff by other people, or what exactly?
Yeah, I guess there's not really a good answer for that, but
I demand an answer.
Just mentioning that one, it sort of made me think, I kind of don't really consider Crow Team indie at this point, yet I would still consider Mojang. So I don't really understand my thought process for that either.
I'm kidding around about demanding an answer because I don't think any of us have one. It's just one of those weird things in the industry today.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I never really thought about it that way.
From my point of view, sometimes it would seem that the whether you're indie or you're not, or however you want to define that particular term, it's some people are going to use that as an excuse to release a quote unquote bad game.
Mhm.
Like, okay, here's a game, it was $5, it was awful, it was terrible, and then the reception you get from that comment would be, oh, well, what did you expect for five
Right.
bucks?
Hmm.
What do you think?
Uh,
What do you think of that?
I personally think that that's kind of a bad tactic, like a bad strategy on anyone who does use that excuse, because I just looked at a game last night called Nitronic Rush, which was developed by a bunch of students at DigiPen. It was completely free, and it was way more polished than a lot of games that I've paid $30 for.
Nitrotic Rush. I put up a review last year, and my goodness, I had so much. I'm into racing games anyway, and the
Hmm.
fact that these guys, they're students, they're doing it for free, they're not making any money off of it. It was really amazing. There were hardly any bugs. The soundtrack was perfect. The
Yeah,
atmosphere, everything worked. And I think I played it for 30 minutes, and I was like, wow, this is just what would these guys do if they had major funding
I
from
know, right?
somebody?
I mean,
I don't know
I
that it would be much better, honestly. It's really good as it is.
Yeah, I think the relationship between price and quality, at least, is certainly with a lot of variance because we can all think of a lot of games that were $5, $10 and really brilliant, or free and really brilliant. I Want to Be the Guy, right? That was like a free indie game, and that became huge on the internet. People loved it. Or I'm thinking about a similar situation. I don't know if you guys remember Aegis Wing on the Xbox like a few years ago. That was another side project that was done by some interns or something at Microsoft Game Studios. Put it out for free, like surprisingly nice. I find that with those cheaper things, you can kind of excuse a certain degree of lower production values, right? Because they wouldn't have the resources to painstakingly render stuff. But
Hmm.
a lot of those games can be excellent. And like you say, a lot of games that are $50, $60 can be full of bugs and way crappier
Yeah.
than something that somebody lovingly puts together and sells for $5. I think Binding of Isaac or Super Meat Boy or any one of dozens of kind of top tier indie games can easily compete with the AAA titles in terms of being fun, enjoyable games.
Right. And it's not to say that there aren't bad indie games out there too. Look at Orion Dino Beatdown, which was completely unplayable.
Oh, that
Uh,
looked so cool though.
Great concept, really bad execution, and I feel bad saying it because I really hate putting down any indie developers at all because I know that they're really trying, but you can't release a game like that and charge money for it. It's not done.
I want to beat down dinos, man.
I know.
That that is a very good point you bring up. Not wanting to bash an indie game because they're indie and they're trying.
Yeah,
But at the same time,
it has to be done.
a bad game is a bad game.
Yeah.
And I for me personally, I don't. Maybe I look at things a little differently in terms of, look, either it's a bad game or it's a good game. I don't really care if it's indie or not.
Hmm.
So it's more of, I think sometimes what happens is an idea, it gets in somebody's head, and they can't make it work for whatever reasons, and they just kind of, yeah, 'cause I hear all the time of just make a game, just put it out there, just get it out there, and you move on. But that could lead to a lot of these types of scenarios where
Right.
you end up releasing a broken game
Mm-hmm.
because the vision never materialized into what you could actually do with the game that you had in your head.
I
Yeah.
mean, for clarity, I would say that's definitely something that's not limited to the indie games, right? Because we can see these major publishers putting out stuff exactly like that, completely unfinished, buggy, crappy games.
Well, from a AAA versus indie standpoint, generally it's more accepted to have
Hmm.
a AAA game. Oh well, it's only got a few, but I mean Fallout, for heaven's sakes,
Oh
look
Yeah.
how
man.
much look how much bug ridden the Bethesda thing, and it's a joke. You
I
know,
had some amazing bugs in Fallout, and they actually made me laugh, and I didn't get mad at them, but I probably should have.
Oh, lol, they deleted my character, 50 hours of gameplay. Well,
Oh no,
what are you
it
gonna
wasn't
do?
that. It was a tumbleweed of power lines and poles flying down a street and gathering up all of the objects that were in the way and just taking them off into the distance. It was quite amazing.
Dude, I had the bug in New Vegas where the dog at the beginning of the game had the eyes not in the eye sockets, but instead just floating next to the dog, but vertically instead of horizontally.
Wasn't there also one where the first guy you talk to, his head turns upside down or something?
Doc Mitchell.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah.
I think I came too late to see that one, but that was pretty funny.
So, from your perspective, is that fair? Is it fair to say, oh, this guy is indie, he released a buggy game, he's pretty much done. Oh, AAA, whatever.
I think that if you have the resources behind you to be a AAA studio, you probably shouldn't be letting stuff like that go out. But I know it's going to happen, and nobody's perfect. It's just the degree with which you have to give them latitude. With indie games, I would probably give them a little bit more latitude than with a AAA studio.
Yeah, it's hard not to when you're talking about technical issues. You're talking about things like bugs because especially these smaller indie developers, a lot of them are four-man teams or whatever, so they put this game out and it's got some bugs, but it's something fun and interesting. Well, I think it's quite a bit easier to forgive that than when some huge AAA release comes out and is super buggy and clearly is the result of the game not spending another month in the can where it should have, right? I mean, a lot of these smaller developers, just like the Hitbox team guys said, like, you don't really have much of an opportunity to test, for instance, so there might be bugs in there you don't even discover until the game comes out.
And especially with huge games that have a lot of variables to them, you can't always test every possible situation, so there is a certain amount of crowdsourcing that'll happen. But it's unfortunate. It's just maybe the way it is. I mean, did you guys hear about the situation with Phil Fish, the developer of Fez? And correct me if you heard any differently, but I think he said something to the effect of that to release an update for an Xbox Live Arcade game costs something like $40,000, and that Microsoft does this on purpose to discourage crappy games from being released on their platform. So, if you do, you get to pay for it.
Well, that's I guess I can see the logic of that, but at the same time, it's kind of discouraging to hear that it would do that much more to dissuade people that are putting together this interesting stuff you see on the PC. That's for sure.
Well, I have a great segue for this one, but not to say that I didn't entirely see it coming, but in a way I sort of felt it coming, and that's a lot of what started me in on this whole YouTube thing in the first place. Was I was kind of sick of the way consoles were treating games. I felt like really the way that we're going now, indie games are kind of what needs to be talked about because that's what's going to move us forward. Mm-hmm. And I hope it can come full circle back to consoles someday, but I don't know if it ever will.
Yeah, well, that'd be great to see, but yeah, maybe that's very ambitious. But hey, if it does continue to get bigger on the PC and the conversation continues to go in that direction, I'm sure we will see more emphasis of this stuff on consoles. I mean, hey, the Xbox Live indie stuff wasn't there at all a few years ago, so at least we're moving towards having something. But I couldn't agree more that I would so much more rather see footage of these interesting, quirky little games I otherwise might not hear about than the millionth update about some stupid, like, here's a new costume for Super Street Fighter 4. Like, please stop it with these dumb incremental updates about all these big releases. Like, for every 50 updates I read about, Gears of War or something, I could be reading about 50 other interesting little games that I might actually want to check out.
Or how your entire marketplace is full of Dance Central 2 songs.
Yeah, hey, on one end, I can't really blame people covering the industry because they know that that's where the hits are. If you have a story about Call of Duty, that's always going to get more hits, even if it's just some dumb, hey, they're releasing a new weapon skin for Call of Duty. But that's just how it is. I hope to see more sites at least that are more dedicated to covering these indie games, and it does seem like more and more people are coming out of the woodwork to express interest in that stuff. I mean, your channel obviously is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, and that's really all I want to do is just foster an avenue for those people who are tired of this crap that's going on to find something that there is still another gaming industry that exists parallel to the one that they might be getting bored of. So they don't need to just bow out completely, because that's almost how I started to feel, like there wasn't any more gaming happening.
Yeah, well, that's definitely how I feel about sites that cover games.
Right.
I almost never go to any of those sites anymore because that's kind of what I see. Rather than coverage of. I really like the way you put it, of like another game industry happening alongside the one that we all know. That's really cool,
Yeah.
and I think that's just a great way of explaining what's going on.
And
What
it's a game industry where there's like $10 games and really nice people to talk to, so I don't see the problem. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
what are your thoughts on the influx of, we talked about indie games, but there's digital distribution stores now that we didn't have a year ago. We're talking about Indie City and Indievania and, those types of platforms for these indie developers to get onto. What are your thoughts on the digital distribution side for the indie games?
I think it's great that the options are there, but in a way, I'm not sure how much they're helping because it's really only catering to people who already know about them, at least for now. And I would love it if that could change, but I feel like right now it's all about Steam, and to a maybe very small degree Desera, and it's just starting. I'm not sure that a lot of people know about that because I only even found out about it less than a year ago.
There was an article written by Tribute Games, who's the developer of Wizorb, and he put out his numbers. 96% of his sales, I think this is total, I could be off. 96% were from Steam,
Right.
and a lot of that was from the daily deal that he had on there. So, in your mind, is there a way to fix this in terms of getting? I mean, because Desura is kind of the Steam of the indie gaming area. Is there a way for these other little guys, to kind of break in and to maybe take a little bit from Steam, or is Steam just so ingrained in the PC gaming culture that there's just no possible way an Indievania could compete with Steam?
I think that Indievania needs to absolutely keep what they're doing and keep doing it for as long as they can, because I think what really needs to happen is there needs to be a sort of a shift in the minds of these PC gamers to get that they need to start looking actively for this stuff in other places. And I think that will happen if we just keep at it and people get that there's this whole other world that they haven't quite found yet. And I totally feel like that's really what happened, because I was really just a Steam PC gamer for the last couple of years, and then I sort of realized how much I was missing. And once I did, a whole world opened up, and it's been that way since. And that's what I want to try and pass on to people. Just how much they're missing.
I'd like to throw out a sort of other possibility, and kind of the way I've been thinking of it is, do you think there's any merit to this idea that the higher emphasis of indie stuff on Steam as of late, I mean, they have a separate page for indie and actually promote that stuff a fair bit. Do you think that could even act as something of a gateway drug, so to speak, for people in these indie games, that they discover this world kind of through the mainstream digital distribution channels on Steam, maybe get one or two indie games that they really love, and then maybe they start looking online for like news about indie games or sites about indie games and discover this other stuff? I mean, do you think there's
I completely agree with that, because that's pretty much how I did it.
Right. Well, all right then. That's because that's kind of how I feel about it, and how as nice as it would be to see even more emphasis on that stuff, and Steam probably will continue to push a bit more in that direction. I think the way it exists now might even be beneficial to these other services, because people are inevitably going to discover them through enjoying indie games on Steam. I know I've discovered a lot of very cool ones on Steam and wound up going to the developers' web pages and stuff and finding this other free stuff that they never found a distributor for, or who knows.
Well, what's going to be really interesting is what happens as the next console generation comes out. I'm not going to put the conversation on consoles again, but
just
as we start to go toward this digital distribution in all avenues, what's going to happen to Steam, really? Are we going to still go back to now focusing more on mainstream games, really popular games, or is indie going to stay a big part of this picture or not? And I hope it does.
Well, I would speculate that it will, because it seems to be doing well for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more in their library. It's more potential options for your daily deals. The section gets a lot of hits. A lot of those games sell huge, much huger than they would sell outside of it. So obviously it's beneficial for both parties involved. So I can't imagine that if the next generation of console comes out and then all of a sudden there's that much more attention thrust on AAA stuff that Steam is suddenly going to be like, oh, nobody cares about indie games. We're not going to carry those anymore. I could see them getting to that point if indie game sales start to dwindle, which I don't know might happen as a side effect of that, but I would imagine it's going to work the other way around instead. I think more people are being turned on to indie stuff rather than the other way around.
That's what I hope too.
With the advent with the popularity of stuff like, there's going to be, Steam Greenlight, and there's Kickstarter, and there's Indiegogo. There's just so many avenues for an indie to go. Now, not to say that their Kickstarter will be funded or their Indiegogo will work for them, because, the bottom line in terms of, the indie versus, AAA kind of a thing is there's always going to be the haves and the have-nots, Mm-hmm. You're always going to have Double Fine, and you're always going to have, indie developer number 9654.
It's weird. I just, sorry to interrupt, but it's weird to be having a conversation where Double Fine is the have and somebody else is the have-not. When we think back to the way people talked about Double Fine 5 years ago, it's just funny.
It really is weird, yeah.
But anyway, go on, Adam. I'm sorry.
Just wanted to finish up with. So, what are your number one? What are your thoughts on the crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, however you want to call it, and with the new Steam Greenlight? How do you think that's going to impact what indie games we see?
It's tough to say, just because I'm not like an expert industry analyst or anything, and I'm just sort of reaching in my speculation. But I feel like I wonder if Greenlight existing is going to sort of take away a little bit of the vision of a lot of people and make them put a lot more effort into marketing and spending time on making, networking a really big part of what they need to do to get their vision out instead of just working on the game. Granted, it's a new avenue, so that's good, and if it can get more people on Steam, that's good. But at the same time, I don't know. It's really tough to say, honestly.
Yeah,
I sort of just feel like
really
I need
early.
to wait.
Yeah, it's really early to be able to say, but I agree with you that that's a very real possibility, and hopefully it doesn't change the climate for the negative.
Yeah. I mean, the way it's going right now with exactly what we have as far as tools for indie developers, I feel like it's increasing in positivity generally. So just any kind of disruption to that, I sort of worry about.
Yeah, you're like, leave indie gaming alone.
Yeah, just let it grow in this.
Let it just take place in this little vacuum. I don't want any interaction from all these mainstream jerks ruining my stuff.
Well, I don't want to come across like Valve isn't really being good to indie people.
Yeah, no. Yeah, of course. But I can see the point. The potential other side of that. Let's say.
Well, from the interviews that we do on the site, I ask the question, what are some of the successes and failures in your development? And 99.9% of the time, they'll talk about marketing as one of their failures. And I kind of see it as, for the most part, and Dustforce was a great, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit to how these guys work and to be able to talk to them. And it's, look, I'm a coder. I do sound, or I make sprites, or I create maps. I don't know anything about marketing. I don't want to know anything about marketing. I'm not a real good talker, so just let me make my game. I'll upload it, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, and I think that this shift now, because everybody's really a reporter, if you think about it, everyone has access to social networking and can get their voice heard to a small degree. So I feel like if the game's good enough, that the marketing should sort of self-generate. And I know that's not a viable strategy for anyone to just let it happen, but it would be really nice to know that there would be enough people that really care and appreciate this stuff to really get the right message out if the right message needs to be heard.
I mean, Sorry, go ahead.
On the off time where you do have to give an indie game a not so great review with your indie impressions, how has the reception from those developers been towards the critiques that you've given to their games?
I've honestly, at this point, not put a lot of time into doing negative reviews. I mostly pick games that I know I like already, And I know that's not really a great way to go about your media, but at the same time, I don't really want to put out a lot of negativity into the indie world because there's too much negativity in the rest of it as it is.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Oh, man.
So, and I'm not going to say that there are times when I've disliked a game and, passed on it. That's happened a few times. I've actually played a bunch of games. I have a whole folder full of Indie Impressions episodes that haven't been uploaded for various reasons. Some of them because they just didn't record properly, and some of them because I just didn't feel like it was the right time to put that episode up. But I will hopefully do more of that in the future. I just don't know about doing it yet at this point in my YouTubing career.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on to a point just from a minute ago, I guess. But as far as the marketing perspective, right, I know that in marketing right now, this idea of electronic word of mouth is a really hot topic. There's a lot of papers coming out kind of analyzing these effects. And obviously, as we continue to push into this super huge internet / social networking / everyone's on Twitter and Reddit and all this stuff, I think we certainly are going to see more games where we have a significant effect of that being a real source of marketing for them. If we look at some of these games that wound up having very long tails because they wound up becoming popular on certain websites, right? I mean, games like Mountain Blade, for instance, or, hey, Minecraft. I mean, that's kind of the ultimate example.
It is.
Of course, for every game that blows up like that, there's 1,000 that don't, but that ratio is probably going to get better over time as more and more people start to become absorbed in the kind of internet world, I guess, and as that becomes more mainstream. But that being said, of course you need to have something on top of that if you want a better shot at success, and a lot of these developers don't really have that, right? You don't have a marketing department when you're 4 guys in a garage coding a fun little game, so
yeah,
you have to hope for that, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a lot of just hope you get lucky type of stuff going on. And really, I mean, that's what I'm doing with my own channel.
Yeah, well,
I want to get on a little soapbox here.
All right, let's
go for it.
For anybody listening, for that matter,
KFC fries are the worst.
They are. I briefly read an article somewhere somebody put up about because everybody now wants to talk about 10 ways indie developers can use Kickstarter, because that's the big rage nowadays. And one of them was don't expect your game to succeed, something along those lines.
Number 1, be famous.
Well, yeah, kind of. And I just kind of want to get on here and say, look, do not listen to anybody except yourself when it comes to wanting to make a game. If you listen to all the naysayers, you listen to all the negativity out there, you're never going to succeed. Don't let these idiots and these circle jerking morons take away your dream. You have a dream. Do what you need to do to make it happen. It drives me crazy when one of the first things somebody says about indie gaming, or even some of the stuff that we have done as a site, and I don't know if this is true for you, but for every Minecraft, or for every rock paper shotgun, or for every this or for every that, there's a million of these, and it's never going to work, and you're never going to make any money, and there's other things. That's BS. You know?
Agreed.
If you think that way, then you're going to fail before you even start. So don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to these quote-unquote critics. Do what you do in your heart and just go for it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I completely agree with all of that. And if there's anything I want to say, it's that I want to be one of those people that will listen and try and give your idea a fair shake. That's kind of why I'm here to do this.
I think if anybody brought into that kind of excessive negativity online, no game would ever be released, no site would ever post anything, because there's always somebody that hates something. And I hope I didn't inadvertently send the message that I agree with that idea, that it's not worth trying because of the poor ratio of astronomic success. So Adam,
no.
I hope you don't think I'm one of those guys.
No, it had just sparked something that I wanted to talk about. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely agree in that regard. And a lot of the games, well, a lot of everything that I enjoy the most winds up being these quirky, interesting little things that people just throw out there because they want to do something cool. And if I just looked towards the homogenized stuff that the hive mind prefers on Metacritic or whatever it might be, my experience with gaming and my experience with a lot of things would be a lot less enjoyable. So I've said it on the show before, people that put out these, put out whatever, their website's only getting 100 hits a month or whatever it might be, somebody out there probably really loves what you're doing, and maybe that'll even spread. So you don't need to listen to 2 or 3 angry trolls that just want to tell you suck because you're doing something that they're not, or whatever it might be.
If you do release a game and it stinks or there's a problem or whatever,
then you can kill yourself.
Well, you could.
Somebody watched Indie Game the movie.
I'm kidding. Nobody kill yourself.
You learn from the mistakes and you try to do better the next time. And you admit your mistakes to your fan base. If I released a game for $5, if I released a game for 5 cents and it didn't work as advertised, I'd be mortified. I would be like, oh, look, I'm so sorry. We're going to fix this or do something. Admit your mistakes, fix them, and then move on. Don't sit behind your monitor and cower under your desk because you're going to get flamed and all of these other things. Look, you know what? Not everybody's going to like you anyway. So, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was going to say the other bad response you see is that people start trying to flame the flamers. People come out and they go, oh, you suck, your game sucks, and then the person that put it out is like, well, you guys suck, Then it just becomes
then you're in high school again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, don't remind me about that.
Yeah, I will give credit where credit's due with regards to Orion Dino Beatdown. At least the developer did the best he could to field as many questions as possible, and I believe he was up for like 3 days straight on the Steam forums.
Yeah, I saw that too, and as bad as I thought the whole situation was, the fact that guy, he was like, man, sorry, we're gonna fix this, this is gonna happen, and he, to his credit, he did what he needed to do, and he did what 90% of the people would not have done.
Absolutely.
So are you saying I should go out and buy Dino Beatdown? Because I really want to.
We talked about marketing for indie games. I want to talk about how you market indie impressions and your experiences with, if you have any, with maybe kind of trying to get your channel out there to the to more people.
That is an interesting question because I'm actually in the process of working on improving that as we speak. I'm hoping to set up a website for Indie Impressions in the coming couple of weeks. So I will be looking for a domain name and stuff soon. As far as what I have right now, the YouTube channel, Twitter, and a Facebook page kind of make up the entirety of my Indie Impressions world. Of course, I do have a bit of a presence on Reddit now. I seem to post most of the videos on there, so that's good. But it really mostly revolves around those 3.
Which one do you have you seen the most positive feedback from?
Definitely Reddit.
Yeah,
I can't
that's the right answer. We love you, Reddit.
It is. The amount of stuff, like just last night I posted a video, and the one for Nitronic Rush, in fact, and this morning I come back, I think it had 85 or so up thumbs, and it was at the top of the indie gaming subreddit. And I had never used Reddit until only 4 or 5 months ago, something like that. So it's not like I'm a master of it, not like I know exactly what I'm doing, but the guys over there seem to care and seem to be a lot on par with the same sort of message that I feel like I want to put out.
How do you go about the, because there's a fine line in the internet in the days that we live in where from marketing your product to spamming your product.
Oh, yeah. That's a big deal.
Where do you think that line is, and what are your thoughts on that?
I take that very seriously, actually. You mentioned my tone before of how I try to be professional, at least to whatever degree I can pull that off. But I think it's really important not to disrespect your viewers. I mean, they're the reason that you have any reason to keep going, right? So you don't want to be spamming them with, please like, comment, subscribe, do X and Y, it's not going to help anyone. I mean, they'll hear it, maybe some of them will do it, but they're going to be kind of like hollow subscriptions. You don't want to have that. You want to have people who actually hear your message and not are there because they necessarily don't want to be. And that's where like the whole box for box thing kind of messes up, where people, exchange subscriptions on YouTube and you can quickly get a couple thousand subscribers because you grab them from places that they're not actually trying to watch your videos and they don't care about what you're doing. They just made a transaction essentially to have an inflated number. That's the exact opposite of what I want out of my channel. I want viewers who actually want to contribute and are there to watch and discuss and promote discussion. So I would not want to be one of those people that is all about spamming their viewers.
I couldn't have put that better. That was a brilliant explanation.
It certainly was. I've seen firsthand a few indie developers who have used bots to increase their Twitter and their Facebook followings, and they failed in the marketing because of that. Because they were like, hey, here, play my game. I've got this many people, and I've got this many people.
Right.
And then you take the time to, because number one, for us, what we do is we don't ever look at anything regarding social networking or anything like that. We don't go, oh, well, how many hits can this guy provide for us?
Right.
It's not even about that. But I looked on a couple of indie developer Twitter feeds, and they had something like 3,000 followers.
Yeah.
And you put the game out there, and then they retweet it, and there's like 2 or 3 hits from that. And then they come up and they said, yeah, we used bots and we used these things, and
I find that depressing, honestly. It's almost worse than just having no followers.
Right.
You're talking to no one.
Definitely. I mean, to put a message out there and have at least what you perceive to be several thousand listeners and getting 2 replies would feel so much worse than if I had 5 people following me and I got 2 replies.
Yeah.
So it's
you mentioned hollow subscribers, and I think that is a perfect example. For us, I would rather have us have 100 subscribers that loved what we did, who commented, who were professional, who added an intelligent conversation to what we were doing, than 10,000 subscribers who didn't really care.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to even take it back to the marketing thing, I think we are going to see more and more emphasis on that kind of interaction in the future. I think when people are going to be marketing stuff online with Twitter or whatever it might be, having a good, active conversation, right? Having a good ratio of what you say and what people will actually discuss with you is going to be more important than the raw number of subscribers, right? So if I am an advertiser or something, it might make more sense, or would make more sense, for me to invest in somebody whose YouTube videos maybe get 10,000 views but tons of comments and likes and discussions than somebody who might get, 1 million views or 1 million subscribers but nobody cares.
Right. And I have to say that there's a good example of quite a few YouTube channels out there that have tens of thousands of subscribers, but I wouldn't say that there's any real conversation going on them. So I don't want that. Even if I had that many, I wouldn't be happy with that. That's not the way I want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really great way of putting it. And, well, hopefully that's the future for everything in general. I do like to think that we're starting to see a lot of pushback on this idea of the raw number of subscribers or Twitter followers you have or whatever is the only thing that matters.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, in my experience, I had one indie developer tell me that I was too small for their game. They told me they wanted Google Analytics information.
Oh.
He had like 10 things that he wanted from me.
Who was it, Adam? Throw him under the bus. Under the bus. Let's go.
And I kind of laughed. I was like, wait a minute. I don't even know what is your game anyway?
Oh, man.
It was crazy. I just thought I would share that. The only one in the year that we've done this. So I guess that's a pretty good ratio. I wanted to talk a little bit about your modding of Super Meat Boy.
Yeah.
So for you, as a modder, how do you go about level design and making your maps? Is it? I mean, so you sit down and you think, okay, well, I'm going to, I want to do this. I want to have the player do that. So kind of just walk us through how you set up your levels and kind of the thought process that goes into what you want the player to accomplish.
Sure. Well, a lot of what I do as far as the level design in Super Meat Boy has been, in a way, sort of a response to what was in the retail game. I really carefully sort of looked at that. And I've beaten the game many times over and have played it for hours and hours, so I pretty much know all of what the game has to offer as far as content. And I sort of wanted to use the tools that the developers made in a different way to try and come up with some new challenges within the same parameters. Um, and when I start level design, I really sort of just make a framework. I just lay out, just tiles just to see what kind of flow I want to do. And I try to come up with something that's a little bit different, and I try to come up with a different approach. I mean, it's kind of a tough thing to really break down that like how I've designed every individual level. But as I look at a chapter of levels made up of 20 of them, I feel like I want to have a direction that chapter can kind of stand on its own, separate from anything that's been offered before in the platform of Super Meat Boy. And there's probably thousands of them at this point, considering how long it's been around. I mean, that's another series. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say this conversation makes me really want to check out this mod community for Super Meat Boy because you're making a very compelling case for these levels of campaigns of them strung together with new and interesting directions to take the gameplay. And I want in, man. Give me these levels.
Well, that's an interesting thing, though, because the way that the Meat Boy levels were distributed was with this level portal, the internet's on the console version, they called it. And in the last, I think it was 4 or 5 months, that's actually been shut down because a bunch of jerks decided they were going to actually hack the database and threatened Edmund that it wasn't secure, so you need to do something about this. And they said, no, it's fine. And they pressed them more, and then they actually just took down the whole thing. So right now, there's been no new levels coming onto Super Meat World for quite a while. So we're going back to the old dev mode days of distributing them as zip files on MediaFire and hoping that somehow you'll find them, which I guess brings YouTube back into the equation. So I actually released a teaser trailer for the last chapter that I've been working on for almost a year now, on and off. And I'm hoping to keep working on that, but honestly, the indie impression stuff has really taken over, and I haven't really had a chance. But I hope to get back to it someday, because I love doing it.
That's really tragic circumstances behind what was a really incredible, cool idea for getting the community involved in a game like that. So that's tragic to hear.
I feel the same way. But there is still it's there. I'm not sure how useful it is, but there's Super Meat Boy's official forums. Used to be incredibly active. Now you'd be lucky if there's a post a day or so. But, if the community comes around, you never know. Maybe it could kick back up again. That's what I hope anyway.
I don't want to end things on such a somber note. So do we have something more positive to talk about?
Let's talk about your 7 years at GameStop.
I said something positive, Adam.
Note.
Sorry.
Actually, no, I'm curious about that. So, GameStop, man, what's going on?
The first question I would have is, I still like retail. I still would like to go into a store and buy a boxed copy of a PC game.
Mm-hmm.
So in your 7 years, what was the overall feeling of the company and of your particular store towards PC games in general?
This should be good.
Okay, well, let me start by saying that I actually officially, when I applied to work where I worked, I applied to Electronics Boutique. My store became an EB Games, and then eventually was cannibalized by GameStop. So I actually never tried to work for GameStop, but that's how it ended up.
Okay.
That matters to me just because of the angle with which the two companies approached gaming, and I felt like Electronics Boutique was a lot more responsive to that. And GameStop, to a larger degree, was really just in it to sell stuff. I mean, it's a company, of course, that's what they're in it to do, but there was a much more personal feeling about the way that at least my store was with regard to customer interaction. And that's what really attracted it to me is the whole same thing that I'm doing with Indie Impressions. I really like doing that with customers. I knew just about every console game and mostly every PC game that was on our shelves to some degree. I may not have had, encyclopedic knowledge of every one of them, but I could give them sort of a walkthrough of it, and I could help them when their computer wouldn't run it. So, in regards to PC games specifically, it was great when it first started. We had a huge wall full of them. After a while, the wall got smaller and smaller. Eventually, it was, a couple of 4 feet. Then it became a couple of end caps. I mean, it still went on into the GameStop world. There were a few PC games, but they mostly just sat there. And it was just a very small number of people who I knew all of them by name who picked up PC games.
Yeah, just a lonely, crappy little shelf in the back.
It was The Sims and WoW, right?
Mostly big games like that, yeah, and eventually a lot of time cards for things, which took up most of the shelf space. I can't say there was a lot of really interesting PC games on that shelf. It was a lot of that, $2.99 roller coaster, whatever, knockoff games that weren't even real games that I knew about where they came from type things. I found very discouraging.
I think the last time I bought a real PC game at a GameStop was Sacred, the first one, and I had to pre-order it because they otherwise wouldn't have even carried it. So I mean, yeah, that's and that came out. I was in college at the time, so had to have been actually I'm looking it up. 2004, so. 12 years, not 12 years, way to math, Phil. 8 years later, I can't imagine how much worse it must be now. Do they even have, I know you don't work there now, but does GameStop even have a PC game section now?
I honestly haven't gone into my store for about a year, but I've heard from other sources that they do not. Not sure if that's true across the board. GameStop does have a lot of different initiatives going in their individual regions, but it's possible. I wouldn't be surprised anyway.
Do any of your guys miss retail? Do you miss having the box and the physical copy? Or
I hate retail.
I go back and forth on it. I actually was really upset when they started to really cut instruction manuals out of boxes with regard to at least console games. That's something that I'm not sure a lot of people really get why that bothers me so much, but it really does.
No, I'm actually with you on that. And maybe it could be a generational thing because I remember when instruction manuals for games were really awesome, especially when PC stuff in the 80s just had these just amazing tomes and cloth maps and all this just 100 pages of just a background story about the game world, and it was awesome.
It made it personal, right?
Yeah, it was super cool, and I would always spend hours just going through that stuff while installing the game or before installing the game, and it was brilliant, but over time that's been scaled farther and farther back to the point that when they cut instruction manuals out of games, we're at a point that instruction manuals tend to be 4 pages. They just have instructions for the controls and maybe a couple warnings and maybe a paragraph of story, and that's it. They're almost never full color, and to compare it to what it was like, say, 20 years ago, it's ridiculous. But I guess now we're at a point where a lot of people weren't playing games 20 years ago, so they don't remember cloth maps or spiral-bound books and stuff, or even leather-bound.
The note page at the end for whatever reason. They kept that.
Yeah, that's weird. I didn't even use that back then. So.
I didn't either. Maybe Mega Man, I would write a password in it or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah. All right, so Adam, I do like having physical copies of stuff, but I like to get those physical copies of things online because screw going to stores, man.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm in the place where it is now. The fact that it's so been abandoned really at this point, why not just use digital? If we're not going to bother with any of this stuff, just do it easy then.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm with you on. I mean, my perspective's changed over time. I just find it a hassle. It's not like I don't like the experience of going to a store and window shopping and checking out all the cool stuff, but every time I go to Best Buy or a GameStop, I've always got these crappy warranties being shoved down my
Right.
throat by passive aggressive, and I don't blame them, I guess, because they're trying to hold on to their jobs, but I just
Yeah.
don't like the social pressure that they put on you to get a stupid subscription to a magazine or to pre-order something or to buy an extended warranty. It's
None
a
of us
headache,
like
and I
doing
don't
that,
like
by
it.
the way.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you don't. I mean, I've seen a lot of Ask Me Anything threads
Yep.
from former GameStop employees. So I know how the game works, but I still don't like the experience
Yeah.
of going in there and dealing with that.
Are you,
And
I
you,
don't like the way people at GameStop give you the used copy because they have the checkout policy, but they
Yep.
don't admit to having the checkout policy, and they tell you it's new even though it's visibly scratched. And
I
oh
know.
man, I hate you guys so much. Get off this show right now.
so Phil, how do you really
Yeah.
feel?
Well, Adam, if I could use profanity, I would tell you how I really
Are
felt.
you telling me that if you go to Best Buy and you bought Oblivion, you would not want a subscription to Maxim?
Yes, that is exactly. Not only a free subscription for what, 8 weeks, and then you have to manually cancel it. So you again have to deal with that pressure of calling and having somebody try to convince you to hold on to the magazine, and you effectively have to argue with them to convince them to let you cancel the magazine subscription that was supposed to be an 8 week trial. They know a lot of people either don't bother because they forget or they don't want to deal with the hassle of that phone call. I mean, Adam, I
completely
hate
mental
you.
game. Yeah.
I hate you for bringing that
Okay.
up. I hate you for bringing it up.
Breathe, Phil. It's all right. Just in and out. Let
That's
it
it.
go. Let the hate flow out of you. So I want to kind of go back to the indie impressions.
Yeah.
Is it your? Do you want to do this for a living? Would this be just the perfect thing for you if you did this full time and didn't have to worry about working?
Absolutely. I couldn't say that I would want to do anything really much else than this. And, I put up a video, I don't know if you guys watched it, like a vlog thing, talking about what exactly I want to get out of this channel. And I felt like between the channel itself and if I could get into game development in some way, shape, or form, and I'm making steps toward that, that would be ultimate for me. I mean, that would be my dream. So I'm not sure if either of those things will ever pan out, but I definitely have to give it a shot. That's really what I'm about.
So, what are some of the things that you're kind of maybe thinking in the back of your head that you are doing to progress to make that happen?
I want to actually keep that under wraps for now, just because a lot of it is still up in the air.
Oh, come on,
Maybe
man. Come on.
TPG exclusive, man.
Yeah, come on, man. Tell us. Come on.
No,
It's like peer pressure. Come on, man. Everybody will think you're cool.
Hey, you want to buy an edge card?
well,
Don't you want to be cool?
Gameplay guarantee
just
is $3. If you scratch this thing, I'll replace it for you. Unless you circle scratch it with your 360 because you bumped into it, then I won't.
Yeah, which is what always happens anyway, making it. Why bring that up? Why I've got the rage out of me, and then you got to go and just suck me back into that world of hate and intrigue that is GameStop.
I found one of Phil's buttons. Now I can use it later on.
Oh man,
it's
one of everyone's buttons. Everybody hates GameStop. I mean, hating GameStop is a meme. So
It got a little excessive at times, though. I think a lot of people hate GameStop for the wrong reasons, because a lot of the employees, we get hassled to no end. You wouldn't believe.
I would never take it out on anybody that worked there. So
Is the whole Battletoads thing? Did you ever see that?
Wait a minute. You know about the Battletoads thing. Okay, so that is a national meme then.
yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah, we got calls about that for a while, like every other day.
Jeez. Did it annoy you? Because that would annoy me. Because number one, you've got to do your whole spiel when you answer the phone.
Yeah.
And then you do it for some idiot talking about Battletoads.
Would you like to pre-order a copy of Battletoads?
Thanks for calling GameStop where we buy and sell used games. This is Nick speaking. How may I help you? And then we add on usually. two
When
or
you
three.
say it like that, you even have the voice of a GameStop employee. It makes me not like you.
I did it for 7 years. No, it was crazy. I mean, the amount of times that we would get prank phone calls, we would have fun with it when we could, but a lot of times we would have a line of people going out the door. We'd have boxes of trades we had to process, and we'd be the only person there. So it wasn't even feasible to have fun with stuff like that a lot of the time. Not to mention, quotas and stuff, because they always had quotas.
Yeah,
how
but they'll
was
never admit it.
Oh, they
how
do.
how was your management? You see a lot of things, with these Ask Me Anythings and this other internet kind of hate towards the GameStop management. How did yours handle?
Well, we had a lot of different eras. My particular store went through, I think, 4 different managers, maybe 5 during my course there. And at the end of it, I was actually an assistant manager. So I took a lot of pride in the fact that I wasn't going to be one of those jerks to the people that were working for me. But for the most part, the majority of the managers I had were actually really cool. It was just the people that were above store level that started to get a little iffy. Some of them are really cool too, but it really varies.
Did they know? Did they know about games? Did they know what they were talking about?
I love how this is
Some
becoming
of
all
them,
about
yes,
games.
some of them, no. A few of them were actually reasonably well informed. Some of them had no interest in it, and this was just their job. It could have been any corporate job, and they just
I
happened in this industry.
I often got the impression that GameStop, at least to some extent, and correct me if I'm wrong here, or maybe this just varies by store, but that they would deliberately hire people that didn't know that much about games, considering what a popular hobby it was among the
Yeah.
age group. I was always consistently shocked by how clueless some of the people that worked there were. I remember the GameStop by my house, and maybe I remember this because at the time I was in high school and I had applied for a job at this GameStop and I didn't get the job, and they hired this other kid. No, nothing personal towards this other kid. I'm doing okay now. But I remember going in there just to shop for some games, and this kid didn't know the difference between an Xbox and a PS2. Like he didn't realize that a PS2 only played PS2 games and vice versa, and they had these display consoles, and he would like put PS2 games in the Xbox display console, or the other way around, because the PS2 was displayed with the disc tray out vertically, so it looked all cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, how? Not only was it just I was bitter because I didn't get the job, but then again, in retrospect, I'm really glad I didn't, because working there sounds like a nightmare. But how could they have hired somebody that knew so little about games, unless they deliberately did that because they want to hire somebody that is going to not feel guilt about selling you bad games?
Well, I have some very specific insight into that specific question, but I'll put it pretty quickly, and if you want to talk about this after the show, maybe I can give you more. But basically what it is they know that all these kids they're hiring them at minimum wage, and they don't expect for them to be around long, and a lot of the time I think they don't really want them to be around long and get attached to them. So it makes it a little easier, but it's not a good idea to hire someone that has zero knowledge about games, obviously. I think a lot of the time they shoot for like a mid-range amount of knowledge, and I think the ones that have too much knowledge, sometimes they can be a little socially awkward, and a lot of the whole GameStop thing is selling. It's not about knowing the games, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course.
So really, you're just looking
obviously
for a lackey that'll push whatever you tell them to push, and it could have been anybody that could do that as long as they have reasonable skills with ability to conversate.
Right.
So,
Okay, so
but
you're
there is more
basically
to
telling
it
me
than that.
my theory is not without merit.
Yeah.
They hire people based more on their sales, which hey, from a purely corporate bottom line perspective, makes all the sense in the world. From a pleasant shopping experience perspective, maybe not so much, but
I think it's
most
short-sighted. You want
yeah.
people that will bring customers back in the long term, and you're not going to get that with someone with no knowledge.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't. Well, I find it's either that or it's the opposite of the guy who is relentless about showing off what he knows. But
Right.
maybe we've gone on too long.
Yeah,
Well,
perhaps.
let's talk about something a little bit more heartwarming, shall we? Um, are there any individual people that have helped you with your indie impressions, and just maybe somebody who kind of pointed you in the right direction?
Yeah.
You-
The big ones, like I mentioned before, my friend Max, who first helped started getting me into YouTube in the first place. He's got his own channel. He does some game tutorial stuff and random gameplay stuff. His YouTube is youtube.com/Max MAXOVITSJ. If you want to check him out. I've also got my YouTube buddy and partner Anzariel, who is very big into like the Left 4 Dead scene and a lot of those types of games. Minecraft he used to do for a while. I started moving on, and we've been doing a lot of co-commentary videos on my channel, and I'm sure we're going to keep doing that forever. He is youtube.com/Anzariel, ANZARIEL. And of course, one of my bigger inspirations, Northern Lion. I don't know if you guys have seen his channel. He's got a ongoing, I think it's up to like 280 part Binding of Isaac series. And he is one of my absolute favorites. He's a really, really nice guy, and he's done a lot of things to really try and help me out. So I'm super thankful to him. Have you heard of him before?
I haven't.
Yeah, neither have I, but that sounds nuts. All of that, 280 parts, you said?
Something like it's probably more than that by now. He does them like every day or so, and he's been doing Spelunky, and he's got a large host of other things, and he does indie game reviews like I do too. So yeah, that's among those. Of course, this website, I don't know if you heard of it, TruePCGaming.com, helped me out a little bit.
Mm-hmm. We'll make sure to plug them heavily.
All right, cool. The guys over
what was that site again?
TruePCGaming.com, I think it is.
Can you spell that out?
I can't spell. Sorry.
You mentioned you were doing dual commentary on some of your videos. Do you go into that with a different mindset than if you're doing it by yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. That's my other side, and I take a lot of this stuff pretty seriously. But when I'm having fun with Chris, we're kind of just messing around. I mean, a lot of it is just sort of stress relief type gaming, and we have some really hilariously weird conversations. So, yeah, you got to let that out sometimes.
What one could say it's like the difference between a play-by-play guy and a color commentator, perhaps.
Yeah.
Oh, very, very insightful of you, Phil. That was very impressive.
Yeah, you don't say. I suppose this is as good a place as any to start saying our goodbyes. So, is there anything else you'd like to say? I mean, you've already thanked your friends and all, and we'll make sure to post relevant links in the description. But is there anything else you'd like to say in general before we sign off?
Just for anybody out there that's listening, that's a viewer, thank you very much for listening, and support these guys too. True PC Gaming's awesome. And thank you guys for having me.
All right, Nick. Well, thanks a lot for being on. And Adam, you want to take this up?
No, because I had one more question.
Okay, let's hear it.
Oh, I'm glad we're not live because I think I just lost it. Great. We're out.
Yes. Please leave it like that. You like fumbling like
Oh, dang it, Phil.